Department of Defense and Department of Navy, and had studied as a hospital corpsman and been in personnel information security. But I traveled and learned that people, even though they may know our language, it depends on the meaning. And I just thought, when I said I'm from America, or the United States, a lot of times they didn't know what I meant when I said United States in another language. I know that sounds funny, but that's just the way it was. So we're going to use the language that is called the business language, and it is the spoken word of America, the United States of America, in this globalization of recognizing that all languages and all people are just as important. However, for this statement of faith and believing in this internet church, we are going to recognize our culture, American culture, international relations, as an authoritative word of God for the faith and belief that were inherent to exist in all original speech before the Tower of Babel, and the words that were first breathed by, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was without form, because God, He, she, they, we, all the genders inclusive, we will accept. So back to you for random thoughts now that we're off and rolling, Richard.
Well, I mean, you said quite a bit. Just for the record, I was born and raised in Santa Monica, California, so I'm from the West Coast originally. However, I have been in the Deep South far longer than I was ever in the West Coast. So I spent about the first 20 years in California and the last 40 years in the Deep South, including New Orleans, South Carolina, and Georgia, as well as Florida. So those four states have primarily been the assemblage of my exposure in the United States, although as an investigator, I have traveled far and wide. Like Pastor Teresa, I have worked for the government. I have been a part of the Army as a specialist clerk with the Judge Advocate General's Corps, stationed in New Orleans. In addition to that, I have also worked for Department of Justice as an immigration inspector. I have also worked for the state of Georgia as a juvenile probation manager. And I have also been a licensed private investigator for over 45 years in 26 states, both in civil and criminal matters. And of course, about 10 years ago, I expanded out to branch into paranormal investigations, even though I have been conducting paranormal investigations the majority of my life. So there, now you have a little bit more background about me. Anyway, all kinds of thoughts cross our minds, and we have to be very mindful of our thoughts and create the 0 point, which is basically a point where the mind comes to rest and joins the emotional self and the heart and your higher heart and your spiritual self, and they all come together at the 0 point, and from that moment forward, whatever you decide as far as creating or manifesting, as long as you can project it out to the universe with emotion and intent and see it as already manifesting before you, it actually draws it into your immediate reality. So that's about as far spiritual, and yet at the same time combining both religious thought and philosophical thought as well as spiritual thought, all together in harmony with the other, because like Pastor Teresa said initially, back in the beginning of everything, there was only one school of knowledge. And this one school of knowledge combined religiosity as far as a recognition of a source or power greater than mankind. It also recognized manual physical sciences as far as agriculture and the gathering of hunting and gathering and all that kind of thing, as well as the conveyance of water and the creation of wet reservoirs so that in turn the population could have water to be consumed and so forth. And then in addition, there was also an underlying philosophy of how people thought of life. And in general, they all thought of life in a sort of cohesive tense, you could say, in that they were all in agreement that there was a higher power or a higher being than themselves that they recognized, they honored, and they were showing gratitude for, simply because they recognized that that is why or how they came to be. Then in turn, of course, you add physical reality to that, and you introduce the sciences of medicine, the sciences of agriculture, the sciences of anything and everything that comes together in our immediate physical reality. And then, of course, you also have social constructs of how people should organize and how they should meet together and how they should share thoughts and how genuine they should be with each other in regards to being as authentic as they can be in regards to actually being themselves. And this was a harmonious state of being, and this is the tenets of the knowledge that all came together and passed down into mankind's hands over thousands and thousands and thousands of years, part of which has been lost, part of which has been keepsake, you could say, or preserved. And we are now basically at a very similar junction in regards to the fact that now we have religion and science going hand in hand together, simply because one is absolutely proving that what the other tenets in religious circles had been teaching for a very long time. Science has now basically come forward and validated that what religion is teaching is actually correct from a physics standpoint. On a molecular atomic scale, yes, there is obviously a source of energy and vibration that runs through us all and runs through the entirety of creation around us as far as the world is concerned. So then in turn, you bring things in addition to that, and we are now basically utilizing our biblical understanding of where we have been, and of course to the junction of Christ and Christ consciousness, and you overlap everything with spirituality, and it's spirituality now that is on the forefront or the cutting edge of things, and the rest of science and even the rest of technology is busily attempting to catch up to that spiritualness and that spiritual awareness. And this is the juncture we're at now. So this is why we have stated that we are at the principal ascension stage of things rather than simply a religious body that is following the tenets of one pure religion. Rather, we are universal in our acceptance of all religious faith, of all religious concepts, of all religious belief, because we hold no judgment and we welcome all with unconditional love. And these are the tenets that Teresa agrees with me to the farthest extent, that these are the tenets we live by. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Love everybody as you would love yourself. And if you can do all of these, then of course you are following the principles that were taught by Christ 2,000 years ago. And of course, I always love this one particular passage where Christ is speaking to his disciples directly, and he says, "There shall be those that come after me that shall do even greater things than I." And this was to imply that we are his brothers and sisters, as well as being his students at the time that he was teaching. So, how's that for a few mixed thoughts?
That's pretty good, considering we're going off the cuff. And I have got questions.org international, folks. If you'd like to see some of the alliances, will have questions, and gotquestions.org. Biblical Answers is a nice place, and they've got translation in other languages. And Pastor Rich and Pastor Teresa we have our ACO Association right now for Ascension Center Organization and Ascension Church Ohana, and we're going to do our best to keep our online expenses down for our church, our brothers and sisters, and yet use our resources as we can among ourselves for this radio program that will be coming across all my old locations, and Stitcher and Spreaker and Spotify and iHeart and all of those under spirituality, and at the same time be metaphysicians and be open heart and we will still share our philosophies and how we use chakra balancing and tones and music, and how we are all co-creators with the source that is inside of us. And for those of you that don't like to use the word God, you can still use the word source. And a lot of people don't believe in God, and there's even room for atheists as far as I'm concerned, because one of our brothers, Bill M. Tracer of Memphis, Tennessee, once told me he was an atheist for a long time. And in the open, warm, and welcoming church of his belief and his ways, a lot of the morals in many of the churches outcast people of a certain way of being with partners. And I don't know the political correct terms in the LGBTQ community for churches, but I would like to be one of those, because we set it up that way when we were writing books, he and I, and he helped write one about Teresa, Ascension, and what he was about and I was about. So Teresa of Ascension, I guess, came to fruition today, because I'm now Pastor Teresa. It feels different. I can't explain it, folks, even though we wrote about this time coming, and I've been writing about it since 2007 in the internet, because I told people I would give up in writing now, in the UFO Digest, because we accept those that are believers in UFOs and aliens and unidentified anomalous phenomena, which a lot of churches don't like or won't claim as part of their belief system with God and God Mother and Jesus and the Holy Trinity. So we're going to be somewhat fringe, I would think. But Richard, maybe you know the proper way of what I'm trying to say about we're moving into a political collect, genderless. It's not about race, color, creed, identity, and all things allowed by law, that we will follow all those things with this church. But could you lend about, not judging about color, eyes, hair, skin, how much melanin or what color God made, because he made us all the same. God doesn't make no trash, as the little kids say. Can you help me out here?
Sure. I would like to say that, God, divine source of all, creator of us all, however, whatever terminology we wish to use in order to establish the fact that we're referring to a higher power beyond our own means to create ourselves, that in fact the gift of life is gifted unto us as spiritual entities. I do believe that in the original creation of us all, that we were all perfect beings, completely whole and perfect and divine, okay? And that being the case, that then naturally when you come down to the humanistic form of mankind and so forth, that was actually the way that we were meant to relate to each other as equals, with no bias, with no judgment, with no condescension of any kind, with no discrimination of any kind, that in fact all of us are equal in the eyes of our creative source, and therefore that is the way that we should actually interact and treat each other. And so quality, and this is going to definitely set us apart in a lot of Christian circles, simply because a great many teach from the Old Testament, and they teach of a God that is judgmental and that is full of wrath and that casts people out to hell. And, there are all kinds of sins that one can commit. Now, of course, we are bringing in the law of the land, the law of the courts, the law of our Constitution as a country, and all, of course, the legal codes that have been created in order to keep us in harmonistic approach and harmonistic interaction with each other. And so, that's all established and that's all recognized, from the aspect being that, no, we will not consciously break any laws or deliberately discriminate against anyone, regardless of what color they happen to be, or what race they happen to be, or what creed they happen or belief system they happen to have, or whether they are gender specific, gender non-specific, whatever their approach to life is emotionally, or whatever approach to life they may